Welcome to the All Access Podcast from the experts at Tevis. Each episode, we'll talk about technology topics, trends, or solutions that manufacturers need to know in today's rapidly evolving times. Sit back, enjoy the discussion, and let us know what you think.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to another season, another episode of the All Access Podcast. I am your host, Michael Thiessen, and we are excited that you joined us. As always, we're trying to find interesting speakers, interesting guests, interesting topics to bring to you. And it's also not very often that we bring to you repeat guests, because we're trying to find new content for you and interesting content for you. But this particular individual that we're going to have here with you is one that we just have to stay in connection with. And I know you as a listener, you have listened to the first episode that we did with this individual back in 2022 and are probably eager to see what he has to say in 2024. Now, don't worry about, you don't have to rummage through the old tapes and the old recordings. Who did we talk to that had such an insight in our manufacturing industry? I'm going to tell you in a second. But this individual, he is the president and CEO of the AutoForecast Solutions. And he's been in the industry for many, many years. He's in the industry for over, 25, 30 years already. And he's really the person that you absolutely need to listen to, because he has the pulse on everything that's going on in the automotive and the manufacturing sector. And the interesting thing is that, of course, he's not just looking into his crystal ball, as we said last episode, but that he's actually utilizing data, and that drives his decisions on what the forecast will be for this current year. Thank you, Joe McCabe, for being on the All Access Podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Always a fantastic, warm introduction, so I appreciate it.
Well, you know what? With a gentleman like you, you need to have this introduction because you have such a wealth of information, and everybody is hanging on to every single word that you're saying because you have that information.
Thank you so much. If you could repeat that for my wife later about how important I am, that would be dynamite.
We'll talk later off radio. I mean, off microphone. But no, it's always a pleasure to have you on this podcast. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you.
So the last time we spoke to each other was just after the pandemic. We were still going through some of those pains and issues. And that was back in 2022, early 2022, that we spoke to each other. There were still a lot of things that were going on. Question to you, did we get out of those problems? Did we get rid of them? Are we clean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. A little background, obviously, and again, you dove into what we do. Our job is to forecast every vehicle built worldwide for the next 8 years, who builds and where, when, how many. And you're right, we dive deep into the weeds, a lot of granularity and monthly level detail. So we have to say, hey, what's happening yesterday, what's happening today, and what's happening tomorrow, and sort of morph those things in to just give decision-making capability to the automotive community. And even back then, we said, look, there's a new norm coming. We're not going to exit this idea of COVID. Semiconductor chips were a major issue at that point. Supply chains are getting impacted. Wars were on the brink. I mean, there was just so many volatile issues in the industry going on. So basically, when we talk about the conversation of, are we out of the woods from the last time we spoke in 2022, we're just in a new set of woods, let's call it. This idea that the whole competitive landscape has changed with the introductions of companies like Tesla, now a legacy manufacturer, but everyone's saying we're going to be the next Tesla. We don't have to put an engine and a transmission in it. We just have to invent a really cool product, and hopefully we get this new consumer we've been talking about for years. They're emotionally involved. They are socially motivated. We make the joke every single time that, if I was a electric car company, I'd mock up 5 of them and give them to the 5 top TikTokers on the planet and get 10 million eyeballs in 24 hours. If I get 0.01% of the market, I'm a car company. Now that's plan versus execution. But this is our new reality, the opening of doors of new players that are major disruptors to the legacy players, and how everyone has to retool their strategy going forward to maintain success.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, I mean, back in 2022, we talked about the chip shortage. Obviously, that is back to normalcy, I would call it, to some kind of normalcy that it's actually doable. The resin shortage, that's done. The transportation issues, the supply chain issues, I think there we done. But some of the remnants are still somewhat there. We changed the way how we look at trim levels. The trim levels in automotive and vehicles have reduced quite a bit. Everybody went to the direction, almost like what Tesla laid out, that you can only get three different lines, and that's it. And it's either going to be white, black, or purple. Of course, I'm joking here, but that's what we did. Where before we could have 1,000 different types of iterations of different trim levels. I think that kind of stayed around. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so that's the whole point. I mean, the manufacturers have found that at the end of the day, shareholder value is what drives all decisions. Yes, we can get government environmental groups in and pushing EVs, and on paper things look good, but the consumer controls the market, and the shareholder value is the ultimate goal. So you got to find a balanced portfolio, and the best way to get it. And the way you get there is you get more profit per vehicle. And so if I can offer you 3 sets of trim levels instead of 8, and the one that's available today is the marquee version, which is going to get me the most profitability, then I'm going to push that one the hardest. And then, the other tier ones, the other trims, okay, they'll be available. But the idea is you want to push all of your key products, all your innovation, all your computer related, all your chip related technology in the high ones, because if I can give you less vehicles built, but more profit per vehicle, I will be rewarded in Wall Street, and I'll be better insulated to adjust my product portfolio in the next several years, because maybe I'm a legacy player and I have to offer ICE and hybrids and BEVs, when a new player can come and say, I just have one BEV to offer, and they have immediate success. So there's 2 different playbooks that the manufacturers get to play by, depending on which box they check. Is very, very disruptive. And that's why bringing those trim levels down and offering more car for less cars on the market, but more profitability, is got to be the game that the manufacturers are going to continue to push on.
And also, of course, because of these trim levels that you can only get the premium version, of course, there's a certain price tag comes along that you need to pay that premium price tag. Because when I look at car prices from before 2020 and the car prices now, they have jumped up quite a bit, mainly because you have only this premium or this low-end trim level. And most of them, if they have to choose, they go to the higher-end trim level and purchase that because it has those functionalities, those conveniences that they like to see in there.
Yeah, the remnant from COVID was the consumer is willing to wait. So this idea of a build to spec strategy, instead of going into a dealership and seeing 100 days worth of pickups, say, hey, I'll take the blue SLT one, whatever it is, you go and you order and you wait maybe a couple weeks or a couple months for the exact product you want. And then you can have more of a build strategy at that point. So what happens is that the manufacturers go, okay, those are the products we're going to want to push further at a higher margin level per vehicle, which means that we can dial it back. We see a day where a manufacturer will, sort of be like the old school VCRs. Every VCR had the same brain in it. And the $50 Sony is the same thing as the $500 Sony. They just turn on the EEPROM and all of a sudden it's a $500 Sony. So heated seats will be standard in the vehicle, but might not be turned on. So now I'm going to say, well, how do I get that? Over-the-air updates. You pay $10 a month or $15 a month, and you do this Netflix model. Instead of being more subscription, less transactional over multiple years, be in the pocket of the consumer every single month. If you can figure out that strategy, again, you can get there with less vehicles, all loaded up. And then, hey, I live in North Carolina, therefore give me heated seats in January. Great, for $10. Tesla does with autonomous driving. You're going to see people with, you want Christmas lights in December. Okay, give me $5 in December. Now you have green and red LEDs in your car. And if you could do that and you can replicate that over millions of consumers, that is free money right into the profit side of the equation for manufacturers, which unfortunately really puts a damper on our main consumer, which are the hard parts supplier, trying to plan around all of this absolute craziness in the market that's going on today.
It's kind of interesting to see the automotive industry market and the regular consumer industry market. As you said just now, the auto industry figured out that, okay, a consumer is willing to wait those 8 months, whatever it takes in order to manufacture this. But yet on the flip coin of all of this, we got Amazon Prime, where we want to have instant gratification. And if it's not there, by the end of the day, I'm not going to get this. So those two worlds seem to be battling to each other. Where on one side, we want to have that product here ASAP, if not today, maybe tomorrow morning. While in the automotive industry, we're willing to wait for 8 months until that car is manufactured.
Yeah. And you're right. It's a healthy balance. I would joke about it. Hey, my Amazon Prime is now 48 hours, not 24 hours, big deal. But, you just doubled it. If you think about it on the when you look at the detail of it, you've now doubled the delivery time of that. So you got to put everything in perspective. The other thing that what at post-COVID did was, when you can reduce the inventories at a dealership level, all of a sudden these rare products become more valuable. So to your point of the cost to us of a vehicle, especially when interest rates just stink, right? 9% interest rates, is the number one factor for someone's buying decision, right? So when a battery electric vehicle comes out and it's $60,000 and its counterpart in the ICE space is $40,000 at 9% interest rates, that could be a couple $100 a month there. You made a decision, right? But what happened over the last couple of years is the manufacturers go, look, we have to increase our profit margin. So we're going to raise the price of our traditional products, which makes it sort of a smokescreen going, well, maybe the gap between a BEV vehicle and a non-BEV vehicle isn't as big as you think. Well, technically, it's because the manufacturers were raising the prices on their inventory strapped ICE vehicles to make more profit per vehicle for the same vehicle they had 5 years ago, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's sort of a interesting dynamic that people are going, hey, look, prices are coming down. No, they're actually coming up. But it's the lower end product that they're squeezing in there to try to force you into the next generation product of a BEV.
Right. So 2024 brought along is its own issues, its own set of issues that we have right now. Obviously, if we look at Wall Street and seeing that, the electric market or Tesla right now is kind of leveled out. They're a little bit stagnant of what's coming out. And the purchases, I think the purchase of EVs have kind of leveled out. There's not that initial drive to, I want to be the first one to drive that EV. Now it's kind of leveled out. And now we see more and more individuals or some of the problems that come out with the EV market or range anxiety. The industry is not quite there yet when we deal with it. It's difficult to find a technician that deals with it. Now, actually, we're getting into the used EV space where you can find Model 3s and the earlier Teslas available. So it opens up another area of issues where the new consumer potentially is going to say, maybe I'm going to hold off on that EV and I'm looking into a hybrid vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, we never drank the all BEV Kool-Aid. I mean, the idea that a governmental environmental agenda was sort of the polar opposite of the consumer initiatives of what the consumer wanted never sits well with us when you're getting pushing the demand cycle of, how dare you tell a U.S. citizen what they can or cannot do. So it sort of puts people in a different direction. You have California that's an all in, and they have sort of Montana that says, I'm all out, right? There's such a disparate when you put across all the states out there. Tesla is number one because they're the only game in town. And look, they're great. They're fantastic vehicles. We are not anti-EV. We're sort of pro-reality. We always thought you need a bridge. The idea that there's the early adopter, we were waiting for the early adopter apex to hit. We believe we're in it now. which means in the next few years, you're going to have a softening of the acceleration curve of the adoption of BEVs. We're not calling for a downturn. We're calling about just sort of leveling off. And what that does is during that leveling off period, more competition comes in and more competition to take on a price conscious buyer now. Now this mass market mover, not the one that just wants the new shiny object. The people that want the BEVs bought the BEVs. So what's going to happen is you have the Rivians out there saying, hey, we're going to have a $45,000 option, not a $100,000 option. You're going to see the Chinese wanting to get into the market, and there's no way we're going to stop the Chinese into the North American market. We can try all we can with tariffs and laws and protectionism. There's no way we're going to stop them in the long term. They'll come probably through Mexico. We could dive into that in a second. But the idea here is that, you're going to get, as more competition enters the market, more price wars are going to happen. I mean, Elon's changed his price any given day. He'll change his price. Honestly, if I was a Tesla buyer, I'd be upset. But he still has that loyal Tesla buyer that says, okay, I don't mind that I spent 50 yesterday and my new buyer buys 45,000 today. That's a problem, I think. That can't be a long-term success. But you have the Korean manufacturer, you have the Japanese manufacturer. Look, we always thought you need a bridge technology, and hybridization is the way to get there. You have to convince a consumer a plug is not a disruptor in their life. And the way you do that is you give them a plug-in hybrid. You give them an internal combustion engine, made it to a plug. And you hope that consumer goes, oh, this is actually pretty cool. I drive 40 miles a day. I don't need to drop a gas. I can plug in. It's pretty darn simple. My next vehicle might be a BEV. So what we're going to happen is we need to have a 1 or 2 product life cycle reset. Get a bridge technology hybridization there, and then use that as a launching pad for more affordable BEVs to follow after that.
Mm-hmm. So you also feel, I have my same theories there as well, that the governmental push, the mandates that were put on all the automakers actually had a negative effect on the production of vehicles. It didn't go the natural flow of doing these hybrid models, focusing more on that. It kind of forced the Fords, the GMs, almost into, okay, let's jump full bore into the EV market and create all of this. And I think we're seeing now that a little bit the major OEMs that have made that decision are maybe rethinking this a little bit and putting the stop to it.
Yeah, so we way too politicized, this electrification strategy, and it shouldn't have been. But the idea here is the government should see a success. When we're inching at 10% sort of penetration rates of BEV, that's a huge success, because what you have to do is you got to force feed everyone the same, the same pill, and as long as a certain amount, swallow it. That's fantastic. Now you got a market share. Now you go, great. We've pushed the envelope. We pushed the elasticity of this market. Now it's got to have a little reverb. It's got to come back, and we got to say, okay, that comeback is now going to say, hey, let's get that sweet spot. Let's convince people it's real, but let's give them a plug-in hybrid, which is great for the traditional manufacturers because they have paid for the engines, for many years already. So you can take off a shelf an existing engine, you can mate it to a plug, and it's very profitable to do that. So you'll see a lot of manufacturers do that. When we deal with the manufacturer, when we're looking at forecasting, we look down the program code level and the body and white of the vehicle. And a lot of manufacturers would say, hey, it's an all BEV platform, but then we'd see the body and white and say, wait a second, there's a place for a transmission tunnel. They've already built the flexibility in the platform to not be pure BEV. And you're going to see more and more manufacturers do that. They'll say, hey, it's our BEV platform, but there's an asterisk next to it going, yeah, it's our BEV platform, but it's flexible enough that we can make a plug-in hybrid, a standard hybrid, or even an ICE vehicle off it as market conditions change. So we can run that same vehicle down the same production line, and just slipstream in different powertrain modules if necessary. The Korean manufacturers have done this very successfully. We tell people Toyota always gets it right. Everyone thought Toyota was getting it wrong. They don't. They're around. They want to be around for 500 years. And they're going to look at consumers. They're going to read the market. They're going to sit back and watch. They admitted they missed the advanced acceleration curve of the BEV. But in the long game, they're going to win because they have a very balanced portfolio in the right space at the right time. And, when you go back to the government issues, the government was penalizing legacy players that have tens of thousands of employees, are not just responsible for their company, but their society around them. And they're being penalized in the billions of dollars for not making a product the government wanted to build, but the consumers didn't want, and rewarding the Teslas and the Rivians in the world that had one product because they checked this carbon footprint. And that model is an unsustainable model. You need something in the middle.
And I think we're seeing the issues right now in terms of the manufacturing portion of it, with the experts now no longer being there, because obviously the OEMs decided, okay, I'm going to go to the EV platform. I'm going to have a new set of players. So they let the old experts, the old die makers that had 20, 30 years experience on how to build these, they kind of urged them into early retirement with nice little packages, and had new players and younger players, which I'm not against it, but there needs to be this healthy balance between expertise and know-how, and new innovation and new players needs to be in there. And I think they're seeing that a little bit right now.
Yeah, majority of new plant investment is about what the labor pool they can tap into. That's what it is. And the Southeast, Southern Eastern states are a fantastic way to tap into that labor pool, be honest with you, right? You're right. You look at some suppliers, you look at the old school, automotive is still viewed as manufacturers viewed as like, hey, this, oil under the fingernails kind of dirty job going. They're basically clean rooms building these parts. And, this idea that, unfortunately, I think we're going to have a world of baristas out there and people work in Walmart because they're offering unbelievably financially lucrative packages to people that say, come on in, hey, we'll pay for your college. We'll give you $20 an hour. And it's a tough competition. So you see a lot of manufacturers sheerly pick their production location on what labor pool they can tap into. And that's where you're going to see a huge growth in the South for that reason. People sort of, moving out of Illinois and things like that, hey, we can't deal with the cold weather, cyclicality. We want to have warm weather all the time because then people will maybe stay in the area to do the work. But you are seeing a lot of companies going, we have to reboot. We have to go to the elementary school level, high school level, and educate a potential new employee the value of working in this global automotive space. It's highly technologically advanced, that has some really cool stuff in it that needs to be re-looked at. We're losing the labor pool on the skilled assets. I mean, find an electrician. That's a good price. I mean, welders are making $120,000 a year. There is significant jobs out there for people that can work with their hands. And my fear is that it might be a little too late when we're at that tipping point and when we're really stuck.
My exact feeling too. Every mold shop, every die shop that we're going into are looking for people, looking for programmers, machine operators, et cetera, et cetera. It's getting to the point of where a lot of the industry experts are going to robots to load the machines and all of this. I'm just going to a technology day tomorrow where they're going to be showing off how to have a robot feed machines. And when we get to that point, then all of a sudden we're going to be crying in about 10 years that, oh crap, we have so many people on the unemployment list. Well, it's because we couldn't do anything else because there was just not there.
All the low-cost manufacturing companies, Mexico is sort of loving this, China's loving this, India's loving this. I mean, look, if you're in a tool and die space, it's tough to be a competition because China just, will sell it on pennies on the dollar because there are, a negative that came out of the introduction after COVID of new players is the idea that profitability for a company is sort of secondary, unfortunately, for a lot of them. As long as you have a cool product that may satisfy a need 20 years from now, you get rewarded. I mean, when Rivian came on the market, they were worth 10 times the size of GM with no product to show. Now, they've lost 94% of their valuation, and they're retooling, but everyone thinks, where's the next Tesla? And spoiler alert, there is no next Tesla. Tesla is a unicorn like Apple's a unicorn. They will not be those two-level companies anymore. Everyone's fighting for second place. And when we talk about the China influence, I mean, China wants a North America footprint at any cost. they will take a loss on every single vehicle and every single part for the long game of building market share here. I mean, Rivian was doing and not a Chinese company, Rivian was doing a victory lap in the last couple of years because they were only losing $30,000 per vehicle, and they're high-fiving each other. That's just the game. And then poor GM and Ford come in and they missed their revenue mark by 0.5%, and the stock drops. So there's these two different camps that you can't survive. Something's got to happen. A new camp's got to be created in the middle, or one of them's got to die off. I don't know what it is, but this way of looking at this industry right now is it's on its ear.
Well, China is on the controlling level. They have all of the minerals, all of the mines in order to build these batteries and so forth. And they actually are not utilizing the same type of battery that we are using here in the U.S. Because when you look at China, they have so many more EV brands out there that are competing against each other and they're so far ahead of the game that you already alluded to that one way that they're trying to get into the U.S. market is setting up manufacturing companies or assembly companies in Mexico then so that they can bring these vehicles across the border and then sell them in the U.S. The problem then becomes for the U.S. manufacturing side of it, we're going to lose out. And they're going to be taking over that aggressive market that you just talked about.
Yeah. So BYD right now in China is the largest new energy vehicle producer on the planet, meaning it's anything with a plug, PHEV or BEV. They are well ahead of Tesla. They are Warren Buffett back still in terms of stock. They build the Toyota BZ X series of vehicles. I mean, they're very well established, and we have them coming in the next couple of years into Mexico. And then they're going to say, well, we're not going to penetrate in the U.S. Of course they will. What we talk to suppliers, we always say, look, here's an opportunity, a short-term opportunity. When a new player comes into the North America space, they need their hand held for success. They don't know how to play here. So they're going to want you to guide them, and that guidance will be rewarding you, let's say in the short term. Because what happens is when a foreign manufacturer comes in and plants their flag, their ultimate goal is, hey, when do we bring the whole family over afterwards? The Japanese have done it. The Koreans do it. It's fine. But, if you're not in a karetsu of the Japanese, forget it, right? If you're not part of the tier one strategy of the Korean manufacturers, forget it, right? They control it. When the Chinese manufacturers come over, they're going to see it as a really nice short-term win. But there's a lot of suppliers going, I've seen this play out before. I've seen this movie before. I'm going to get about 5 years of business off them. And then in year 6, I'm going to lose it because all the Chinese company suppliers are going to come here and set up shop. They're going to give employment. They're going to give taxes. And everything. It's going to be a great win for that jurisdiction, but it's going to be really punishing on the current domestic supply base. So now it's about getting ahead of that problem, being more proactive instead of reacting to the problem later.
Well, my fear is that we're going to be setting up a Amazon level for the automotive industry, and that because if you go on Amazon, honestly, try to find a U.S. manufactured good on Amazon. Most of it is Chinese based that they're bringing over at very cheap prices. Same thing on the automotive car. So if China comes in with all of these EV cars that they have over there, what's going to happen to the American manufacturing?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to find more partnerships, more relation, more collaboration to accept the model in. I mean, we tried this idea of protectionism. I think that's going to be a very short-term battery on a gushing wound here. But people, I find it interesting that because it's so politicized, we have this foreign aid concern issue. We have all this idea of anti-Chinese and they're spying on us, and yet everyone forgets that Volvo is owned by Geely, which is a Chinese company. Now, I'm not saying they are spying, but there's Chinese parts in there. Everyone forgets that every Buick Envision in the world is built in China and exported into this market. So there's some institutional blinders on in some cases that it's going to get fuzzy, and it's going to be a really interesting dilemma. I mean, just last year, nearly 10% of all vehicles sold in Mexico were Chinese branded vehicles. I'm not talking about Detroit 3 vehicles that are built in China and brought in here. I'm talking about Chinese branded vehicles, and BYD is not in the mix yet. So this is a big move. When it comes to the rare earth issues and all that, I think Canada's the one that's got to be paid attention to. huge multi-billion-dollar investments going there. Honda just mentioned one. Volkswagen's got one. Stellantis has one in the tens of billions of dollars. They have all the rare earth. They have the ability to get it done. So there's going to be, you got to look at North America as a whole in terms of what all the jurisdictions can offer, but there's a ton of competition just knocking on the door that we have to pay attention to.
So let me ask you now on the manufacturing side, obviously all of this will have an impact on overall manufacturers. When I go to my die shops, mold shops here in the area, in the Detroit area, obviously there is a pain, there's a hurt currently that the big threes, there's not a lot of work coming out of it. Do you think that is partially because of that cyclical situation that we're in with election year we're currently in 2024, that they're waiting on what's going on? Or do you think the election have less to do right now, but it's all about this plateauing of the EV?
Yeah, the election, it's an interesting year, right? We're getting plants that are basically getting, farm manufacturer getting unionized now. That's great because they see what happened in the last several years. But a lot of what happened in the last several years is a mandate to build to this lofty target of vehicles that consumers weren't consuming. And therefore, market conditions were shutting plants down or bringing them from 3 shifts to 1 shift. And people looked at it as, big, bad vehicle manufacturers trying to one up the labor pool and sort of, for lack of a better term, screw us. And we're saying, well, I'm not saying that wasn't part of the conversation, but the market conditions is what drives what needs to get built. And when you're talking about hundreds of days on inventory of electric vehicles, there's no prize to keep on cranking them out on 3 shifts. The Lightning is a great pickup truck, but they went from 3 shifts to 1. We never thought they were going to build the numbers they were telling their supply base. But they came out firing because that was the message of the day, because it was being so highly politicized about the importance of this zero carbon footprint. So when now the UAW gets to go in there and say, see, we're going to save the day, they're going to save the day, but they're still not going to change what the market conditions are. So costs all go up. And protectionism, the labor goes up, which is great. I'm not against it at all. But you got to look at what the market is demanding, and you got to offer a balanced portfolio out there. And we're going to, next few years, it's going to be very, very interesting how this whole thing plays out.
So would you recommend, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, for a lot of the manufacturers that are out there that are dealing with the automotive to hang tight and invest in new machines because the flood's coming? Or would you say, you know what, hold off in purchasing these new machines? Yeah, the interest rates currently are also very high and all that kind of stuff. Hold out or invest? What do you think?
Yeah, I would not just say let's take a break and wait for it, because that's a very reactionary way. You got, automotive is glacial in speed. The suppliers being talked to today about a vehicle that won't exist for 3 years from today, and that vehicle's been around for 5 years, right? So we're talking about a highly politicized issue right this second of a vehicle that is outside the political window, if you think about that, and when it's going to be built. So that's one side. The other side we're seeing manufacturers go, well, we have a paid for vehicle platform and program. We're going to extend the EOP of that vehicle for another year. We're going to buy us some time. Now, that's not really good for the tool and die players, because it's basically the same tool and die that's being used, and therefore just the life cycle gets pushed out on it. But what happens is right after that is going to be a big push for new vehicle programs. Those vehicle programs are going to be a combination of the legacy players that are trying to diversify their products with a more balanced portfolio, which is great, and then new players wanting to get into the holy grail of the North America industry. So the idea is to stay the course right this second, we're telling our suppliers, but keep that visibility of what's coming 3, 5, 8 years from today and get ahead of it. Have the conversation of how you can be a better supplier to your manufacturer now. But again, we tell people, just don't drink the Kool-Aid. If a manufacturer says, hey, we think we're going to build 300,000 of this vehicle, and you're a volume-based supplier, scrutinize it. Look at it, and that's our job. Scrutinize, go, let's look at the competitive positioning. Let's look up, do you really think that 400,000 new truck buyers are going to buy BEVs from 3 years from now? Answer is no, right? But now you have everyone bidding in that space because I have the winner. You can't let your competition take the space. You have to compete.
Well, I think the message is to most of them, what I'm listening to you is do this careful investing for these mold and die makers. Be careful. Don't just throw the money out left and right on frivolous items that you think are going to happen, but utilize this time right now that, yes, you are a little bit down. There's not a lot of new models that are going to be launched right now. There's more facelifts right now coming out, which means not enough tooling. Use that time to look at automating your processes. Maybe look at the overall automation. Look and see if you can train individuals that you have internally for maybe different programs, different softwares, different machines to be ready when it comes, so that the fact is, you don't have as many operators anymore as you used to, or as many users as you used to. So now you need to make do with what you have and be smart about it.
Yeah, great. So, put in perspective, right? This year we had 29 new vehicle programs launched in North America. Next year, another 29, sub 30. But in 26, 27, and 28, we have north of 40, if not 50. 47 new vehicle programs in 26, 44 in 27, another 43 in 28. So that 3-year window is going to be really good for suppliers that are staying ahead of the game and understand where the new opportunities, because a lot of that is a result of the vehicle program and the manufacturers pushing their EOPs out so the next generation of SOP can jump in. So this idea of having that conversation today, but again, not just accepting on face value, going back and saying, okay, manufacturer, I'm in. However, I may not believe on everything you're building. You need 40 tools. I think it needs 25 tools. So tell you what, you pay for the balance up front. If you believe it's going to happen, help me with my capital investment. My capital investment today that I may not see a return on in 3 years. Help me make it so I'm not out of business with 1 or 2 bad vehicle programs that go, off the reservation.
Right. Well, I could be talking to you for hours about this, Joe, because it's so exciting to see what's happening in the industry. How does a company nowadays have to pivot in order to be staying in business? Because we see a lot of the smaller shops, they're going to the wayside, and I feel bad for them. What's happening? They're just caught in that whirlwind of the aftermath. But if there's one message that you could give our listeners that are listening into this podcast, these manufacturers, what would you give them for the next 2 years or so that's coming up?
Yeah, look, I would say be cautiously optimistic. Be the fact that this idea that we will see a lull in the current industry in terms of how they wanted to go with powertrain mix, but that's going to result in a much balanced portfolio, which when you have a balanced portfolio, when you have Tesla can sell 700,000 vehicles BEVs a year, and second place is the Bolt at 60,000, a 10-time, 11-time multiple, that's a problem. But now when you introduce hybridization, where the skill sets of all the manufacturers, that's sort of their wheelhouse, competition will improve. More programs will be a result. Suppliers will see an uptick. So sort of stay the course, but don't wait for it to show up on your desk. Go out there, knock on the door and saying, hey, how can we be helpful as a supplier? We know you want to be competitive. How can our offering, whether it's a product or a tool or a die, make your offering have you better margins, and therefore we both win in this game. The proactive supplier, regardless of where you're in the tier, is always the winner of the day. It's the reactive one that says, I can't believe this happened. And we could have told them, yeah, we saw it coming a mile away. You just were waiting for the answer to hit your desk. You weren't going out there and finding it for yourself. And that's sort of where we help our customers to keep that visibility to always moving forward.
So obviously some of our listeners, they're looking exactly for that kind of data. Where can they go? Who can they contact to maybe get in contact with you or AFS? Where can they go?
Yeah, so AutoForecastSolutions.com. I just put us on your Google search. You're going to see about 12 references in media every day about how we're out there pressing the flash. We got 25 years plus experience doing this, and yes, we have the data, but the data is half of the solution. It's the so what and the why. It's to pick up the phone and saying, hey, Joe and team, why do you believe the volumes of this vehicle is going to be 100,000 when BMW tell me 400,000? Why do you think this program's getting delayed? What do you really think about the impact of these new players, and should we be talking to them? That is where we can add value to your decision-making process. So you got to look at a combination of, a bunch of codes, that's great, but how does it fit within my business plan, and how can I make that successful? That's sort of our MO that's not really matched in the industry today. So, like I said, our website, give us a shout, check us online, give me a call, email. We're always around to basically help. Our success is helping our customers win at the end of the day.
Awesome. Joe, you told us that there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a freight train. It's actually the opening for another good future. So thanks, Joe, for coming on to this podcast. I always appreciate you and your intellect when it comes up to the next several years of auto manufacturing. So thank you.
Michael, always a pleasure. Let's do some more, and looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, my friends, you heard it here. It is not a freight train. Get ready for a flood of more tooling, of more manufacturing, of more of the stuff that we are used to. And there's changes happening. We all understand that. But get ready for it. Don't just sit back and be this reactionary company that just waits for those things that are happening. Utilize this time that you have right now to maybe look at improvements on your company so that you can tell your suppliers that, hey, I'm ready for you whenever you have these jobs that are coming out. And being more of an agile company that is ready for those changes. So those are some of the thoughts that we can leave you with. And hopefully you enjoyed this particular podcast, the message that Joe provided to you and the forecast that it did. Send us a line, and let us know what you think. You can send it to marketing@tebususa.com and let us know what you think. Give us some ideas of the things that you think would be valid for us to talk about, and maybe some interesting individuals that we should have on this particular podcast. With that said, I wish you the best of luck for the rest of 2024. I am your host again, Michael Thiessen. Thank you for joining us at the All Access Podcast, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you for joining this episode of All Access. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about manufacturing technology solutions and Tebus's capabilities, visit our website at Tebus. That's TEBIS.com.